all, I want to thank Mallory with Mallory Visual Media for taking on this very special project. The reason I wanted to make this video was to make sure I have an account of how this cabin came to fruition and all the history associated with it. I hope this cabin stays in the family for generations to come, and I want to make sure that future generations know of the significance of this cabin. This video in this cabin is in honor of my late husband, Jimmy Steve Cathey, who never got to see this dream finished. Also, all the family fishermen who have gone on before us, including my dad, Jim Maddox Jr., my nephew, Ryan Crick, and the cabin is a culmination of almost 2 years of blood, sweat, and lots of tears by me and my whole family and friends. I want to thank my son, Brandon Cathey, for taking on this project and humoring me on all my special requests and unusual building projects. I know he spent so many hours of his time while trying to continue his own construction project. Also, my daughters Lindy and Leah, who helped me paint, decorate, and so much more that it's just too much to list. My youngest son, Shannon, laid all the vinyl plank flooring in his spare time. My son-in-law, both of them, all pitched in, helping me move furniture, do needed repairs, or just whatever I needed help with. My grandchildren pitched in with hauling material, hanging insulation, building the retaining wall, and even the younger ones reluctantly picked up rocks in the yard, but that was in exchange for the Wi-Fi password. The dreams of this cabin actually started many years ago in 1947 when my grandfather Boyd built one of the first cabins on Kentucky Lake in the Jonathan Creek area. It was called Boyd's Nest, and I spent lots of fun-filled days there with my family and lots of aunts, uncles, and cousins. I have so many memories, but sadly few pictures of those lazy, sunny days, swimming, boating, and exploring. After I married and had a family, my husband and I took our children to the cabin, along with family and friends, and we made our own memories there. I was so glad my children got to experience the same opportunities to enjoy the lake like I did. Sadly, after my grandparents passed away and the family grew older and moved away, the cabin was used less and less and was beginning to deteriorate, so it was sold. Some of the family got pieces of the furniture, paneling, doors, before the demolition. I did end up with a few of the dishes that were used for decades there. From that point, my husband and I entertained ourselves with camping, fishing, and boating on Barkley Lake. Just a few miles south of our new cabin is Pryor Bay, where we spent many hours and days with our children. We had no idea how carefree our days were there until many years later our lives were changed forever. My husband was diagnosed with cancer in 2007 and had subsequent recurrences in 2008, 2009, and 2010. After several surgeries, radiation, and chemo, we thought he had this beast beat. I decided in 2017 to retire from my job, and we began to plan how to live out our golden years in retirement. We planned to travel, camp, and fish across the country. We bought a truck camper so we could take our boat with us. We purchased a Waterview cabin also in 2018, just up the hill from this new cabin that year, and life was good. We loved that little cabin, but our dream continued to be a cabin on the lake with a dock. By a stroke of luck, we found this lot at a price we could afford and found a used dock that could be floated down the lake. It was as if it was all meant to be. Planned a trip to Florida in early 2019 and went all the way to the Everglades to fish saltwater. Before we left, his doctor wanted him to have a PET scan done because it had been more than 5 years since he had one. He had fun on this trip to Florida, and I was glad he got to go. On our way back, his doctor called me and said they saw something on the scan and he needed to come in. I didn't tell him until we got home. My husband was the strongest man on earth I've ever known, and he never let cancer stop him from doing or pursuing any of the things he wanted to do. We started making plans for constructing our new cabin. We sold the old cabin, and in October 2020, they started digging the basement. Our timing was terrible because in early 2021, his health started to decline. COVID also hit that year. Building materials went sky high, labor was short, and worst of all, the cancer treatments were no longer working. Nothing more they can do, they said. But I'm stubborn and refused to give up on my husband and knew he would not quit without a fight. So I found a clinical trial. We spent most of the summer of 2021 driving to Nashville 3 to 4 days a week. One good thing that did come out of all the delays is I had plenty of time to plan the interior of our cabin, and I did put a lot of thought into every little detail you will see inside. I believe the last time my husband was at the cabin was in July 2021, and he never gained his strength back to make the trip to the cabin again. After several hospital stays, pneumonia, sepsis, and a myriad of other problems, he came home and was put on home hospice in December. He lasted 4 months and passed away on April 11th, 2022. This cabin is a culmination of me and my husband's hard work our whole life. It was one of our lifelong goals to have a cabin on the water with a dock that we could make memories with our children, our grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. It was something we were going to work on together, but I ended up finishing it up without him. So many times I wanted to shut the door and walk away, but I knew he would not want me to do that because he and I never quit on anything we started. I had to finish it to honor him. I knew he would have been so proud of it and would have loved to stay down here. I feel a sense of peace when I'm here as though he is with me in spirit. So let me share my cabin with you now. As you approach the cabin, you will notice I did not use conventional deck spindles. My husband loved going to Florida, so I wanted a coastal look. Google was my best friend throughout this whole project. So I would just search whatever I was looking for, and I searched nautical deck designs and found this unusual woven rope look. I ordered 2 600-foot spools of rope from Canada. One came all packaged in a nice box on a spool. The other looked like the FedEx guy just opened the back door of their truck and kicked it out the door. What a mess. But it was like wrestling a 600-foot anaconda. The more we tried to work with it, the more it just wrapped on itself. I finally ended up having to cut it in half so that I could manage it better. I had rope strung all the way down my driveway. I also used rope hardware on the sidewalk. One in particular that is shaped like a fish because it finished out the look that I wanted. The rope is not manila, but it's called unmanila or polypropylene. It will not sag or shrink when exposed to rain or sun, and it lasts longer and won't mildew. The deck is one of my favorite spots. It's so peaceful watching the barges go by and the wildlife. I can feel my husband's spirit there too. One of his favorite fishing spots is right down the lake. I can see it from my dock, and in my mind, I can still see him sitting there in his boat catfishing. As you come in the front door, the first thing I like to point out is the deer antler chandelier. I had no idea what I was doing, but I wanted to make one using antlers acquired by my family and friends. I bought a chandelier off Marketplace and took all the extra parts off. I had to cut the antlers off the skulls first, then drill holes in them to wire them to the chandelier. My husband put a pulley over a rafter in the garage and hoisted it up for me to work on. The bottom row of antlers are pointed down, and when I was working on it, all I could think about was the movie Final Destination. I don't know if you've ever seen that movie before, but they all lose their life by a freak accident. Anyway, after several months, I finally got it finished, but I have many scars on my arms to remind me of how difficult it was. All the pine in the ceiling, and the trim, and all the interior doors, and the shiplap on the walls were finished by hand, mostly by me, over a course of over a year. I had it all delivered to my house as we were stuck at home because of COVID. The shiplap was about a 10-step process to get the look I wanted. The pine, I sanded each board 3 times with coats of polyurethane on each one. I became very interested in live edge wood after my son-in-law Scott built my daughter a table using boards he had cut. I wanted to use live edge in the cabin also. So I found a place in Allen, Illinois that sold live edge slabs, and on the way to see my husband's doctor at the VA in Marion, we stopped and picked out a marble slab to use as the island countertop. They kept it for almost a year air drying before I was at the point to be able to install it. About the same time, we were having our lot cleared, and I asked the tree cutter to save me a 24-inch wide hickory tree and an 18-inch wide red oak that I wanted to incorporate into the interior design. So my tree cutter cut them off at 10 foot and 8 foot tall and left them for me. My son-in-law came and loaded them for me and took them to the sawmill and had them cut into boards. I then had to haul them to Palmersville, Tennessee to have them put in a kiln to dry. They stayed there for about a year, and then I brought them to my house. A small piece my daughter took home and even maybe my coffee table in the great room. I'm not afraid to learn new things, as you can tell. The worst thing that can happen is it doesn't turn out. So I researched how to fill cracks and knot holes with epoxy and boards, and I filled all the cracks with black dyed epoxy, and even did that in my island countertop. Some special items I brought to the cabin in my kitchen included this platter that was used at my grandparents' cabin, the spice tins that came from my childhood home, the cabin in the woods painting that my Grady boy painted and in honor of my husband's Cherokee ancestors, the Indian girl painting that was also painted by my grandmother. I think the cabin picture has always been one of my favorites because I've always wanted a little cabin in the woods. I had a choice of having a front door facing the street or making a small space into an extra bedroom. I decided to make the bedroom, and I put bunk beds in there to increase my ability to sleep more family. So right now we can sleep 11 in beds and more if somebody wants to sleep on the couch. By the way, I furnished almost this whole cabin through Facebook Marketplace. I would decide what I needed and I just start keeping my eyes open for the item. Some items I bought used on Facebook include the love seat in the family room, the bunk beds in the little bedroom, the dresser in the master bedroom, bar seats upstairs in the basement, and the vanity in both bathrooms. I feel I have a great mix of rustic with light and bright in my upstairs. I love my bedroom with the light walls and the bright colors, the quilt and the flowers. In the loft, I just had to have a cedar headboard to remind me of my cedar furniture that my grandparents' cabin was furnished in. Hopefully I can add more pieces as time goes on. The quilts hanging on the railing upstairs belong to my grandmother on my dad's side. I decided to carry on the rope railings inside the same as I did on the deck. My dad was an avid bass fisherman, and he put the love of the outdoors in my heart. He would go fishing on a Saturday morning, come home, dress and cook the fish for us for lunch. He was the best dad that 5 girls could have ever had. I guess since he didn't have a son, I was his boy because I was a big tomboy, and I still am. The live edge shelf going down to the basement holds some items that are precious to me. My husband caught this awesome fish when we were vacationing in Cancun. My daughter had it made into this magazine cover that makes it look like he made it on the front cover of that magazine. Then the Key West hat my dad gave me, as he was always lecturing us about sun damage. I put it on and we both got tickled because I guess I knew I wasn't going to wear it and he knew it too. And I wish I had listened to him now about sunburn, though. The little box of fishing flies belonged to my nephew Ryan. He loved to fish with his kayak and probably used those fishing in the river. I love the cozy feel of the basement, which was to be my husband's man cave to enjoy with his family and friends. The stone fireplace and live edge mantel and hearth are home to my wood-carved ducks my dad brought me from his travels. The large metal candlesticks came from my childhood home where we had a large stone fireplace. The cedar logs holding up the mantel were dug out of the ground by my son-in-law Scott from our farm. I stripped the bark off using a power washer with a special nozzle. I wet blasted that bark off all right, but most of it ended up on my face and in my hair. What a sight. My dad collected replicas of antique fishing lures and had some of his own too. He gave them to me a long time ago and I put them away in a box in the closet. I guess they were just waiting for this moment in time to be displayed as the focal point of this antique cupboard. I always loved the Tom Sawyer print hanging in this arrangement of pictures. The fisherman in the picture looks just like my dad in the fishing gear he wore. He always had an old khaki jacket and hat on. He loved fishing farm ponds in Oxbow Lakes off the Mississippi. The old fishing creel came from my childhood home also. The sunset picture I took at Chokoloskee Island the first trip my husband and I took to Florida. I thought it paired perfectly with the small sunset plate that belonged to Ryan. My dad's old army truck made the perfect coffee table, and the braided rugs bring it all together. Another one of the DIY projects I tried was dyeing the basement floor. What a job that was. I tried it, I did it, but I'll never do it again. More live edge was used as the shelf above the kitchenette. The clock I made for my mother-in-law years ago and has been stored and goes perfect. My nephew Ryan had an eye for the unusual, and several items sitting around belonged to him. He was a carpenter and he did remodeling on the side. So my sister had a bunch of tile that he had in storage and I took some and used it in the shower. No man cave would be complete without an Old Glory fridge, one of my few splurges, along with the canoe light. There are lots of small details that take a while to notice when you first come in the cabin, but two that people notice right away, especially when they go to the back room. are the fish toilet paper holder in the upstairs bath and the antler towel rack and toilet paper holder in the basement. As I stated before, Google was my friend, and I located about everything I wanted to use by searching online. Oh, and also Hobby Lobby came in handy too. Continuing out the basement slider is a new outdoor space that we just completed on September 29th, just in time for me to have my boy cousins over for a family reunion. In the corner of the basement patio area is a display of some souvenirs when my husband and I took our one and only trip to Key West. So today is October 23rd, and almost 2 years to the day this cabin is wrapped. Thanks for listening.